Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to this Making a Difference webinar, which is being brought to you by the School Resource Management Network. Our topic today is From Chaos to Control, and we're looking at people-friendly strategies for managing change or periods of turmoil in schools. We're not going to do a long slide presentation today, so this is going to be me and Sharon, predominantly Sharon, talking on screen as I interview her. There we are, let's just move me out the way there. But we'll do a proper introduction shortly. So for the purposes of those who are watching the video recording, your hosts today are Sharon Marsh from Fairmead Professional Services and myself, Matthew Clements-Wheeler from Mastery Clarity Wisdom. We are all part together of the School Resource Management Network. The School Resource Management Network is a cooperative of independent consultants working nationally across the country to provide support for schools, trusts, federations, even local authorities. And our members cover a range of topics, everything from ICFP advice and SRMN visits through to internal scrutiny, change management, interim executives, IT audits, GDPR compliance, and a whole range. If it's not operational, we've probably got someone in our network who can help you with it. So as I say, Sharon and myself, our companies are part of that network, and contact details, if I just duck out of the way, there we go. You can get in touch via our web address just there. It's okay to interrupt if you want to, or just to drop things in the chat. I know that we've got a couple of people who've joined us on the call already. They've already said they'll be muting because they're in somewhere noisy, they're in school or work at the moment. But the overarching rule is be nice to each other. If you disagree with something that's said today, do it respectfully. If you want to argue with something, by all means do. But please be very pleasant to each other when you do. We are talking about change management, and some of the topics that we're going to talk to you about were on the flyer and the sign-up details. So leading people and taking them with you during change, making sure that you've got important elements of communication nailed, perhaps thinking about metrics that might help you embed or evaluate success. Just bear with me. There we go, whilst we stop sharing. Lovely. Sharon, hopefully everyone on the call can now see yours and my faces together. Can you just introduce yourself, say what your experience is, what you do, and why I've invited you here today to talk about change management?
Hello everyone, my name is Sharon. I've been in education for just over 20 years. I started off as a TA working with a visually impaired child. And after that, I was asked to go into the office and I became an admin officer. Over the years, I've worked in a variety of schools, maintained trusts, multi-academies, single trusts, special schools, independent schools, and in a variety of roles as well, school business professionals, CFO, COO, and I am currently an SRMA and a consultant or interim SBP, going wherever I'm needed, helping in school or remotely, strategically or operationally.
Does that mean that you've worked in a particular locality, or have you worked around the country?
I've worked mostly in the south because I'm based in the very south of Hampshire, but I do travel across. I've done a lot of work in London, Kent, Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire. So yeah, I'm happy to travel wherever I'm needed, really.
Excellent. So you've been around, you've seen a fair few instances, haven't you?
I
Um,
have.
so let's kick off with a nice easy one. Say, sort of in your experience, why does change feel so constant and perhaps overwhelming in schools at the moment?
I think because we work in a termly fashion, and it seems that every time there's a return to do, somebody changes the expectation of what's got to be done, when it's got to be done by. Also, the way the world works has changed, so staffing is much more turbulent. People are leaving the profession, so it's become a much more pressured environment, and I think it's just important that we acknowledge that everybody spins more than one plate, and the impact that that can have on other parts of your role whilst these changes are taking place.
You've
Does
often
that make sense?
compared change to moving house. When I read some of the articles that you've published extensively in EdExec, and I know you've spoken at conferences. You've used the moving house analogy. What does that tell us about how to lead change and transformation?
I think it makes you think about the things that are working, the things that aren't working, the things that you need to have with you to get to the result that you're looking for, and the things that have become an encumbrance or things you just don't need to do anymore because something's taken over. So it's a really good time to step back and kind of and look at that and work out the process and how you want it to look in the future.
Right. And I guess with that moving house analogy, isn't it? It's a time of chaos and
Yeah,
turbulence, isn't it? But
it is
there is an end
an
goal.
order.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a purpose. There's a swear word in our house which is box flaps as a rude word when you catch your hand on an open box. So I wonder if there are any equivalent bits or vocabulary around change management which people begin to
Yeah,
use.
imagine. I know everything in our house because we only moved house about 18 months ago now. But it's whenever we can't find anything, it's still in a box. So it's about making sure that we know where to look and and to be able to unpack it in the right order. And that kind of carries into other things that you do too.
Indeed, yes. So just as you say, you can't unpack everything at once.
Yeah,
You can't change everything at once, and there's a need to prioritize. Um,
absolutely.
Thinking of the human aspect of change,
Yeah,
school business professionals spend a lot of time thinking about process and policy, checklists, etc.
yeah.
But somebody you and I once worked with together, I think, made the point that schools are people businesses.
Absolutely.
And what have you learned over the years about managing the emotional side of change management and bringing people with you?
I think it's really important that you share enough information with people that they understand the why of what you're doing, the benefit that it's going to bring to them, the pupils, the community in school, and and what's going to need to happen for that to happen. So I think it's it's all about communicating the right stuff at the right time. You know, strategically, you may have a huge plan in your mind, but actually, you need to bring people along, and maybe they need to have less information at the beginning, but know the end result. So, not hiding things, being as transparent as possible, but giving it to them in chunks that are they are able to deal with, depending on the audience you're dealing with, obviously.
Yeah, it sounds like you've seen the schools and trusts that you've been into experience some quite emotive reactions to
Yeah.
to change. Um, what are some of the signs that staff anxiety is building around change?
It can be that you get that negativity when you walk into a room or the very obvious things, but sometimes it's more subtle. People stop engaging or they don't answer you as quickly because they're waiting to see what other people are saying first. So you get this, you don't get a positive response. You seem to be waiting and if you're not getting the feedback, obviously it's hard to then to move it forward. I think people get very cross and then the rumor mills start running and you hear back something that's happening that actually isn't happening at all. So it's about managing that and people's expectation and really being positive about things and staying really calm and in control, and just sharing as much as you can with the people that are involved so that they don't have that anxiety because none, I don't like change being done to me, but if change involves me, then I'm happy to do my bit and to if I can see a benefit in it for me, my team, or the children, but whatever the process is, then obviously I if I can see a benefit, then I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, interesting. Um, I can see in the chat that we've had a comment that's come in. Someone's put sometimes it's hard to be completely honest about what's going on, and
Yes.
that makes it difficult. Yeah, I certainly understand that. Sharon, what would you say in response to that question? Sometimes it's hard to be completely honest about the changes that are happening and the rationale for them.
So sometimes you can give, you have to give people enough information so that they understand what's going on and how it's going to impact on them. But they may not necessarily need to know things that are happening that don't involve them, or especially if it's something personal about somebody else. So if you're looking to make a change to staffing and it's because of something that's going on in somebody else's life, they don't need to know that. It's not relevant to them to know that. And you have to protect the other person. So you can only pass on the information that's really pertinent to what you're trying to do and be as open and as honest with that part as you can be.
You've got a reputation, I know, because you and I have worked together in the past, and I know you've been around the sector a long time. Yes, got to say that without being offensive. Um, but I know that people say that when Sharon comes into a school, she leaves it better than it was when she first found it. You are a bit of a sort of Nanny McPhee, Mary Poppins type
Yeah.
character. So how do you approach sort of that resistance from long-serving or anxious colleagues? Those moments where people need helping through change, but they don't yet know they need the Marsh magic.
Yeah, it can be quite tricky, especially if I've gone into a school as an interim in an emergency. So it's not a planned thing. I've suddenly had a phone call from a head teacher on the 31st of August that the SBM's not coming back, that kind of role. So the team that are left behind don't necessarily understand why the person's gone. They obviously feel if they've worked with them a long time, there's a lot of personal emotion going on with that. And I see my role at that point as not to come in and make changes, is to come in and listen and to help the staff that are there to work on what they need to do so that they can achieve what they need to achieve by the end of the day, the end of the week, whatever their deadlines are, and to support that. So I like to go in and listen to people and make suggestions. But mostly sort of do the things that I can do. There's obviously normally some immediate things that I need to be looking at, like making sure that payroll is happening and things like that, or critical payments are being made. But but not but it's my job is not I'm not there because I'm not there with any negativity to the person who was there. I'm only there to support them to get to where they need to be so that they can move forward.
Yeah, I'm hearing honesty, pragmatism, depersonalizing what it's
Yeah,
about, whilst also recognizing the emotions that people have got. Because if you are going in to sort something out, if you're internal, you've got that sense of agency, haven't you? Because you are in charge and
yeah,
you get to make some decisions about how it needs solved, what it is and how it needs solving. And
yeah.
if you are coming in externally, as you or I or other consultants do, for us, it's a shiny new project to get our teeth
Absolutely.
into. Whereas for other people, it's been their lived experience for
Yeah,
however long. Hmm.
and you have to respect that. You have to respect that actually they know their school so much better than we do at that point in time. And we need them as much as they need us. So, we can't go in a little silo and just say, right, this is what I need to do and this is what I need. It's about what does the school need and what do you as an individual who's going to work with me need so that we can work together.
Yeah. Without wanting to put any of our delegates today on the spot, is there anybody in the on the call today who might be in the middle of a change management or anticipating a wave of something coming? Be careful what you say. Don't reveal what, who, how, where. But yeah, we're getting some thumbs up. Okay, so there are some people who might be about to face something. So let's unpick some practical advice for them if we can, Sharon. Um, those, of course, who just put their thumbs up are really lucky at the moment because you have the idea that something is about to happen. But let's talk about the first 48 hours of a crisis where a need for change has happened. Say there's actually on play, and those moments where something suddenly shifts. You've written about guidance for the first 48 hours, sort of in a leadership absence or something. What's the very first thing a leader should do faced with an emergency like that?
Well, they have to gather the facts and work out what they need to do so that the school can remain operational in a safe and legal way, so that we know the pupils are safe, and that everything is happening the way it would in any other circumstance. So it's really important that you focus on those really central legal operations and who we need to carry those out. Um, and then it's to share that view in a way with the other staff and the rest of the school community as necessary, so that you've got a really stable and clear picture of what is going to happen in that very short time. So I had an experience where I had a head teacher. My head teacher didn't come back after a summer holidays. Before the summer holidays, the deputy head had retired. The decision was made not to re-recruit, just to have two senior teachers. It was a small primary school. And one of the senior teachers was also related to the head teacher. So the head teacher went off sick. We had no deputy, one senior teacher, chair of governors was away at the Paralympics. Um, and everybody suddenly appeared at my office door. How do we run the school, Sharon? So all of a sudden, it was a very emotional time. We had to deal with our own emotions and work together in a way that we hadn't worked together before. We were really lucky that we could call on the school next door, because we were in infants and the juniors was across the field. Um, and a head teacher from a SAT down the road who I also knew. And they both came together and gave us lots of advice of what to do and how to communicate what we were going to do with the community. So the staff all knew what they needed to know, and the parents knew, because the head teacher had been a very out there visual person. It was important that there was a message went to the parents so that they knew that she wasn't there, but that we had put things in place so their children were safe and school would continue as it should. So um, it was very emotional, but we all learned a lot really quickly, and we learned to work together in a really different way, really, really quickly.
It sounds like that's an example of one of the things that appears in your writing when I've read. You talk about your approach of triage, communicate, delegate in
Yeah,
those first 48 hours. So against those headings of the triage, communicate, delegate, can you
yeah.
give some advice to our delegates on the call today of what does that look like when you are triaging?
Well, you probably start with quite a long list and then you knuckle it down to what you actually need. So if it's somebody really key, it is about making sure that you are legal. So that makes sure you know who the children are, where they are, when they are supposed to be there, that the site is secure, and as safe as it should be, and that and the staff feel safe at the same time. And from there, you then work out who is around. Hopefully, you've got a plan in place for this, so it's not all just off the top of your head. But if you haven't, it's working out who can take on some roles, so that whoever is left as the person at the top, even if it's very temporarily, can delegate some of that work out, so that they're not having to do their job plus somebody else's job. And and spinning too many plates. It's about sharing the load between the team that you have and making sure that everybody knows what everybody else is doing so that you can then um, communicate that to everybody so that everybody's on the same page.
Great. We've got a poll to ask our delegates today, so that will come up on your screens now. So the question that we want to put to you folks is: have you ever had to manage a sudden absence or leadership crisis? And at the moment, delegates are now choosing from yes, frequently, yes, once, or the fortunate position of not yet. So, have you ever had to manage a sudden absence or leadership crisis? We'll just give you a moment to put that in. We can see a clear winner coming out there in the in the yes frequently. Okay. Nobody on the call has put not yet. That is a reflection, I think, of where we are in terms of some of the challenges that people on the call face. Okay, so hopefully some of that from Sharon has been useful. Um, Sharon, can we turn now from how we moved to that initial surprise and the chaos
Mhm.
surrounding that to beginning to look at the restoration of control? So once the immediate crisis is under control, how are we restoring order and confidence?
Okay, so once people have got through that kind of panic mode that everyone's feeling, it's really important that you regain the calm and the positivity that you normally have in school. So it's really good if you've worked your delegation out right, everybody should know what they've got to do and how they've got to do it. But it's making sure that nobody's feeling isolated, nobody's feeling overwhelmed, that everybody has the tools they need to be able to do what they need to do. You know, there's no point having lots of whizzy software in school if you don't know how to put the children in the register. If you're suddenly left in charge of a classroom, you need to know how to do that. And it does happen, you know, that if you end up with somebody in school who's never been introduced to the new software, you know, that all of a sudden they don't have the tools they need to ensure that everyone is safe. So it's about that slightly longer term plan, making sure that everybody has what they need, everybody's comfortable, and then working out what, you know, if you need to, what the long-term plan is. So for me, that was about making sure we'd found an interim head teacher, and then what the long-term plan was going to be for replacement of the original head teacher who was unable to return to work. So it was about having those conversations, and finding what turned out to be the most amazing interim head teacher who could actually take us all on what was quite a journey because of the emotion that we all went through personally. The school was running and ticking along beautifully, but it was about that personal thing at that point. So then we could deal with that once we knew everything else was safe.
So we've got that initial the crisis happens, it's occurred,
Yeah,
people's adrenaline begins to kick in, and then you begin to move into the sort it mode, and you
yeah,
begin to end up with lots of long lists, I guess, of things that need addressing, things that need sorting,
yeah,
problems to be resolved. In practice, does that mean delegating but not abdicating responsibility?
absolutely. Yeah,
And
yeah.
and what does that look like? What are some of your suggestions for those on our call or watching the recording in that area?
So if your SBP isn't there and you have somebody, you know, and in that time you haven't got a second a new body, you've normally got, you know, it might be a very small team, but you've got other people around who can help you. And it's like it's saying to say the office manager, well, can you take over making the payments happen, but to somebody else, but can you actually put the invoices on so that no one person is suddenly getting a lot of extra work, but everybody knows that she's going to make sure the payments go into the system and she's going to make sure that their bank actually pays them so that everybody, so there's no misunderstanding later on down the line to impact negatively on what's already happened. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it's the getting the ducks in a row someone else is just keeping an eye to make sure the ducks are lined up, but you're not
Yeah,
individually doing it
yeah.
yourselves. You've been in and out of schools in crisis um,
Hmm.
in your career as a consultant. How do you manage your own morale when everyone else is tired or anxious?
I love a good walk, Matthew, with my dog out in the forest, just gathering my thoughts and things like that. Or sometimes if it's appropriate, I will talk to somebody who understands in a way that I don't give away anything I shouldn't, but like a peer-to-peer talk with someone about how do I move past this thing. But mostly me, the dog, and the forest can sort out most things that make me feel, a bit down about something. I am quite a positive person, so I'll always see the possibility of what can happen. So if I can encourage people to do that with me, then it helps me. But if not, I'm walking the dog.
It, I'm hearing that there's a difference, and it's not hypocritical or dishonest, but there's a difference between Sharon, the leader who is decompressing and looking after her own health and well-being, versus Nanny McPhee, Mary
Yeah.
Poppins, who's in school, and is it important in your experience that leaders maintain that sense of the cheerful, the what can be done, the how it's going to look when it's fixed?
I think so, but like with anything, you can only give as much as you've got to give. So for me, if my cup's empty, I can't give anything to anyone else. So I do protect a little bit of time for me. But when my children were small, when I was working full time, that there wasn't much time for me. So you had to enjoy what you were doing and you had to see a purpose in what you were doing so that you could carry on. So for me, these days, I go into a school, and whether I'm there to be their SBM or just to do a bit of internal scrutiny, it's about how I can leave them in a better position. So it is about taking people from when they're in that absolute crisis of they've lost their best friend across the desk and they don't really understand why they're not there anymore, to actually, I can do this and I can do it really well. And actually I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now, so that they don't need me anymore. And that's where people have called me Nanny McPhee, because they don't need me anymore, but they want me there, which is a very lovely compliment. But I like to know that I've left the school in a better place.
Indeed. So, whilst it might not feel like it at the time, do you see crises as an opportunity to build institutional resilience? There's nothing like the lesson of if only we'd done X beforehand, why wouldn't have happened? Um,
Yeah.
you've written in your articles and you talked previously about how schools can prepare before crises occur. Can you share some of your learning in that area?
So I think having, lived the crisis is always a really good idea to have a plan in place so that if key members of staff, whoever they may be, it could be the SBP, it could be the head teacher, it could be the caretaker, because everybody's role is critical at a different point of the day and of the year. It's about having a plan so that if somebody's not there, who is going to deputize? What is going to happen? What does that look like? And how long can we sustain that for before we need to do something more permanently? And so it's all about making sure that you've put the plan in place because you know your school and your community the best of all. So you are in the best position to put those ideas in place when it's a calm time and everybody can think logically without being in a crisis, without being upset, cross, or whatever else it is that comes across at those times.
Yeah,
So
nice comment
have a
in
plan.
the chat there. I just want to express sympathy for that. Someone's put, "We never have a calm time!" Exclamation mark. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There
yeah,
are, schools are a busy spot. There's never a calm time, but there's a calmer time when there's not quite so much crisis going on. So it's about making time to be strategic. It's about making time to read the things you need to read and to step back and think about it and protect that time. so that you have it, so that when a crisis hits, you are more prepared than you think you are.
One of the things I've done in the past, just to share an idea here, is I've come up with a list of potential crises or change management changes that need to happen in schools and trusts. Um, I've come up with a list of staff. I've just chopped the staff list up into its various names. And
Yep.
then I've thought of what happens in the annual calendar of education, such as an Ofsted inspection in one of the schools in the trust, or a trust-wide training day or something. If you come up with those three sets of ideas and scenarios, so things that could go wrong, people who work for you, and something else that's going on, get your teams into groups and ask someone to pick one slip from each pile. And you've randomized the scenarios that you are trying to think about. And you can use that as quite a fun way to work out who got the absolute doozy, the worst set of circumstances, the worst things that were happening that could possibly happen. Um, Sharon,
Yeah,
how
and
do
that kind of group conversation would be good because not everybody thinks the same way. So doing it the way you just said would be a really good way of involving other people and letting people see things from a different point of view, which is also very important.
how do smaller settings manage the issues of cross training to build resilience, where you've talked about that in the past?
It is harder when you're in a small school because obviously there's less people around. I know I've often worked on goodwill, so I can get people if people love where they work, they will stay for a twilight and do things if you really need them to, or you can negotiate that into inset days, or if you do the twilights, the inset day is actually a day where the staff don't have to come into school and do things like that to so that you can get the best out of the people at the time you need to, but also that there's something in it for them afterwards.
Interesting. Have you come across anybody using AI to take bullet points of what needs to be done and work it into a procedure?
I've heard people doing a little bit of that, but not too much. Some people are quite nervous of AI and the implication, but I've also heard people be really positive about it, like going into a meeting and it taking the summary and it really speeding up the process of writing minutes and remembering who said what. So I think it's definitely got its place, and I think it will become more normal, um, especially in the rurals. I find in the rural schools they don't. I worked mostly in rural schools when I was
Hmm.
at the beginning of my career, so they were much less encouraged to do things like that because it just wasn't in their thinking. Whereas in the bigger mats and they're much more dynamic, and with so many more people in them, they get those ideas from people, and people influence each other on their confidence using AI. So I think it's an interesting spot to watch.
We said at this point we'd ask some of our participants on the call if you're willing to post in the chat an example of a resilience measure that they've seen working well in their settings. So just whilst Sharon and I continue to talk, have a think about examples of resilience measures that you've seen working well, and then once I've asked Sharon a few more questions, I'll come back and we'll grab some of those out the chat, and we'll pick up some of those and decide what we like. Sharon, that would be
Okay.
quite good, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But one of the themes that you refer to in your articles and you've already talked about in our time today is communication
Hmm.
and culture. So you said communication sits at the heart of every successful period of change. Um,
Absolutely.
so what makes communication in a school environment particularly difficult?
It's quite hard to get everybody together at the same time. So you can't just call a meeting and expect expect everyone to be there because teachers are teaching. By the time the teachers are finished, the support staff have normally gone home. So it's really hard. So it's about being able to pick times to get key groups of people together. And I find that that works really well. Um, Writing emails with all the information in, making myself available to speak to either a person on their own, a little group, you might get two or three people come knock your door, just being available, and then talking to to the group. So speaking at SLT level, making sure everyone knows what's happening and everyone's involved in the agreement of the strategy anyway. And then like making sure that the teachers and the support staff and the non-teaching support staff as well know what's going on and when it's going on and how that's going to impact on everybody.
Yeah, that timing, the difficulty of the bell and having people in different places, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it's another one, isn't it, where that inadvertent use of the phrase all staff when somebody
yeah,
doesn't mean all staff, it lands even harder in a time of crisis
it
where
does.
this applies. So can all staff come? And it's like, actually, no, we didn't mean the receptionist because we needed to keep the trust phone lines being
Yeah.
answered or the school office there. So we didn't mean can all staff come to that meeting, or we'd like to thank all
No.
staff and wish all staff all the best as they go off into the half term,
Yeah.
having dealt
The
with
poor
this.
office staff and
Yeah,
the caretaking
there
staff
are.
who are still there.
Yeah, it's a difficult time, isn't it?
It is.
So
It
what are
is.
some of the lessons you've learned about tailoring messages for different audiences? Governors, trustees, teachers, support staff, parents.
I think for me, it's about making sure I'm using appropriate language so that um, I'm speaking to people in a way that they understand. I have quite famously said that in my very first governors meeting, I was there as a clerk. I'd not worked in a school at the time. This was my first kind of paid bit of work in a school. Um, and they started talking about pandas. And I had absolutely no idea what they were talking about for the entirety of the meeting. Because what's a panda got to do with school? We're really, really good at using letters when we should use words. And if you don't understand that, the people completely miss the message. And so I think it's really important that you speak appropriately. You wouldn't speak to the senior leadership team in the same way as you would speak to the pupils. You have to make sure that it's in context and is relevant to the people you're talking to. And obviously there are things that you would want staff to know that you wouldn't need parents to know or wouldn't need pupils to know. So it's about making sure you're getting the right information to the right people in a way that they can understand it, which is which is why it's great to start with an email because you can make sure you've done it that way in my experience, and then going and talking to people. And some of the most important conversations happen around the coffee machine because people are relaxed. They're just being themselves. They've got some people will never speak in front of a crowd. I'm not, I know I've done some speaking, but I'm not very good in a meeting scenario. If my opinion's quite different to somebody else's, I'm not very good at that. What feels like a very, it's not aggressive, but very different point of view. So I don't want to be that person, but I will quite happily talk to someone about it one to one or in a small group or by the coffee machine. So I think it's really important that you give people access to information and you in all sorts of scenarios so that it can be relevant and safe.
Yeah. Yes. Communicate, communicate, communicate.
Okay, absolutely.
One of the tips, I guess, that I saw exemplified by a head I worked with once was she would ask everybody, "What have I just said to you?" when leaving a one-to-one conversation with her,
Yeah,
um, so that she understood what it was that we were taking away from the conversation. And I use it myself as well with people now. So
yeah,
what is it that we've just talked about?
yeah.
What
And what
are
we've agreed.
what are you what have I asked you to do now or to do
Yeah.
differently in future? And what are you going to tell other people about what we've said? Because when that change management, Chinese
Yeah.
whispers comes back together, doesn't
Oh,
it?
yeah.
And you, rather than
It
order,
does.
you descend into chaos when our beautifully planned, crafted message that we've
Yeah.
written based on
It's misunderstood.
on your advice, Sharon, becomes mangled in the retelling, in the corridor conversations, and at the water cooler. Oh, but
Yeah.
Sharon said this.
And maybe Sharon didn't. So,
Sharon didn't.
so it's about, yeah, it's about communicating the same message in a different
Yeah.
way to the
Let,
right ones.
let's turn back. Let me pick up some of the things that people have put in in the chat that leads good examples of that they think of organizational resilience. Write everything down. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
Operating
Keep it
procedures, isn't
tiny.
it? Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
Sharon, do you ever go into places and find that they've got a procedures manual and a folder that you can just pick up and follow?
No,
There's
very rarely.
there's a lesson, people.
It's so much easier when they do. But
Mm.
yeah. Yeah, you're often, you'd like to think that as professionals, we've all left our schools in a great position so that if we aren't there, things still happen. But it's amazing how many times you go in and nothing's written down, apart from the passwords that really shouldn't be. But,
So, someone has suggested using the opportunity of training days to put members of staff with each other to at least talk about what it is that they do in their role, so that if they are not present, other people can understand
yeah,
the principal task that they do every day. Have I got that right? I'm getting a thumbs up there. Good. Um,
I
are
think
there any
that's really
wider
important.
lessons? Yeah, from
I
that.
think it is. I've been in many schools where teaching staff don't know what they do in the office. We don't know what they do, but they're there. And actually, it's really important that they know what they do because they can't value something if they don't know what it is. But as soon as they know that without them, people don't get paid, the equipment doesn't arrive, nothing's checked for its safety, and there's no toilet roll for the children. All those things that happen with magically, if you don't understand it, it's a really tricky one, but also I think it's a really good practice for people to shadow each other so you can cross over and you could step into somebody's shoes if you needed to. I think that's a really important thing for schools to do.
There's a great comment in there from Helen. Thank you for that. Um, where you've put give everybody time to recover from the last change.
Yeah,
People need rest and recuperation time.
they
And
certainly do.
that, yeah, I mean that's why we like people contributing during these sessions, don't we, Sharon? Because
We do.
so
Yes.
the
If it's a controlled change, absolutely. You wouldn't in it's really tough, and I've seen it happen where, especially in trust, they roll out a piece of software, say a new piece of HR software,
Mhm.
and then and immediately afterwards, the primary schools have had to change MIS at the same time, and the impact that that has on them because they every all of a sudden the things that they do and they do every day and they know really, really well all becomes questionable because they're like, well, how do I do that? Well, I can't run that report, and where do I find that information? And so they lose confidence, and it's exhausting bringing in a new thing because you have to think about what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how you make that happen, and do the day job at the same time, keep everything ticking over whilst learning a new process or a new piece of software to then suddenly have another one on top. It just, for some people, it just knocks their confidence completely. And that takes such a long time to recover from. And some people just don't. And so it's really important that we're aware of that and we don't plan to do that to people.
I I would second that. the thing for the most senior staff in an organization to be aware of is what their deputies or the next tier of leadership is trying to do in terms of managing change. Because if you think about it in an individual school setting, um, the head teacher has the whole school overview, and beneath her or him will be either a deputy, two deputies, some assistant heads, school business professional, all with their own responsibilities and their own to-do list, their own list of things to improve. The motive is great, but it's the job of that top level head. And the same is true in trusts where you've got heads of service, you've got finance lead, ops lead, data, HR, estates. All of them will have their programs that they want to deliver, but somebody has got to step back and think, what is the cumulative impact of all of these?
Mm,
And everybody just,
yeah.
can I just add that to the agenda? Can I just nip that in? Can
Yeah.
I just do X, Y, and Z
Yeah.
in order to move this forwards? Um, and
Yes. Or yeah, it's people introducing a new club at the same time as there's actually construction work going on in the school. It's two great things that both need to happen, but they can't happen at the same time.
yes, or we're going to change the way we record appraisals and performance conversations at the same time as we're changing the software in which we record them. The
Yeah. It's too
the
many changes
cognitive
at one
load
time.
is significant for people who are just trying to learn how to do things and to lead
Yeah.
that change to execute that change sustainably. Um,
Yeah.
as we draw towards the end of our session here, Sharon, this has been great, and we're getting some positive feedback. Yeah, I understand that some people have got to go, but can we turn from the reactivity to leading? When change is
Yep.
planned rather than forced upon us, can I ask,
hmm
what are the hallmarks of leading it well?
Everybody being calm, everybody understanding what's going to happen and when. I would say, making sure that again you've got a plan, but it's obviously you've had more time to think about it, talk about it as a team, work out what's going to be best because I may be at this level and thinking that everything will work, but somebody down here or over here has something that happens in their job that I'm completely unaware of. So I'm not aware of the impact. So having those conversations with people to understand how the ripples of whatever it is that's being brought in may affect other people, and making sure that everybody is aiming for the same thing at the same time in a very controlled way. But again, staying calm. If I run around like a headless chicken, nobody's going to believe me when I say it's all under control. Being able to answer people's questions in a really clear and measured way and have the vision of where we're trying to end up. Again, like moving house, knowing where I'm moving to and that it's going to be great and what impact that's going to have on everybody else in such a positive way.
Thank you. That's been really interesting today. Are there any tips or hints that you would give people coming out of this? What's the one thing that people listening to this call and listening to the recording should do to be better set up to manage change?
Have a really clear picture of your school, who does what, when they need to do it. And if you're making a procedural change, how that will impact on the things that exist at the moment, but knowing what the prize is at the end, knowing why we're doing it and what benefits it will bring, so that all that extra work we have to do to get there is worth it. And also that we've had time to be really calm and really clear, had time to ask the questions so that everybody on the journey understands it, and is happy to do it because we know that it's going to work really, really well.
Thank you. It's really helpful words of wisdom for our delegates.
Okay.
So, as I return to putting the slides on screen here, it only remains for me to thank you as delegates for attending this afternoon and for your contributions to this webinar, and of course to thank Sharon Marsh for sharing her wisdom with us. Sharon, thank you so much for everything that you have shared. Contact details for both Sharon and myself are on the screen, and you can find Sharon's company, Fairmead Professional Services, at the link there. My own is also on the screen. Um, Please do get in touch, folks. Those of you who've been on the webinar today or who are listening to the recording, Sharon and myself would be very happy to talk to people, wouldn't we? And we tend to have an initial conversation with people with no charge to see if we can help you out. And again, if you've got a problem that Sharon or I can't solve, one of our fellow network members in the School Resource Management Network almost certainly will. So again, just get in touch, give us a bell, and we can point you towards the right answer. If you've enjoyed today's webinar, we've got another coming up. Our next webinar will be on the subject of consultants. Can't work with them, can't work without them, where we've got a team of people, some of whom are still working as consultants to the sector, some who have left working as consultants and have gone back into actual schools and trusts. So that should be a very interesting conversation to have and to listen into. It isn't always Sharon and myself who lead these sessions for the School Resource Management Network. We have a range of our member companies and firms who pop up and deliver these free webinars from time to time. And if you keep an eye on our LinkedIn feed, you will see details of beyond the consultancy one. We'll be looking at internal scrutiny. We will be looking at CPD and project management and how school business professionals can hold themselves to account for their own development goals and those they've set their organisations. We'll be doing some stuff around IT auditing and digital confidence with Neil Limbrick, and we will be inviting the wonderful Helen Burge along. She's coming along to talk to us about sustainability and all things green. Thank you so much for your time with us today. That takes us to the end of our session together. Do stay in touch with Sharon or myself. Sharon, thank you very much, and delegates, goodbye.
Thank you.